What are your thoughts on what is called the sorrow of war? Some say war is hell and soldiers are the sinners condemned to it. Others believe it is not merely the physical loss, but also a profound wound to the soul that haunts a person for a lifetime. Yet another reflects, war robbed them of their youth, their love, and their dreams. They return from the battlefield, yet remain trapped in the phantoms of the past. Truly, it is all sorrow. But war, paradoxically, is also a crucible for human ingenuity. In the fury of conflict, humanity has poured immense passion, intellect, and resources into creating machines of destruction. Driven by the ambition to master the darkness, they crafted sophisticated weapons for nocturnal warfare. Like the Northrop P-61 Black Widow, a symbol of haunting creativity, born to conquer the night and decide fates on the battlefield. The concept for this revolutionary aircraft was forged in the fiery crucible of the Battle of Britain and the London Blitz in 1940. As the Royal Air Force inflicted punishing losses on German daylight bombers, the Luftwaffe shifted its strategy, turning to the cover of darkness for its devastating raids. This pivot exposed a critical vulnerability in global air defense. The night was now a new terrifying battlefield. The infamous Blitz that followed resulted in devastating consequences for Britain. In just 8 months, more than 43,000 British civilians lost their lives, with approximately 1 in 6 London residents becoming homeless. This brutal campaign drove home several crucial lessons. Ground radar alone was insufficient. Specialized aircraft were essential, and conventional dogfighting tactics were useless in the dark. Witnessing this firsthand, American observers like Colonel Carl Toohey Spatz recognized an urgent need for a purpose-built night interceptor, a machine designed from the ground up not merely to fly in the dark, but to own it. War, therefore, is not just a story of pain and loss. It is a testament to the tragic dichotomy within human nature, destruction for the sake of survival and creation in the shadow of suffering. This very dichotomy gave birth to the Northrop P-61 Black Widow, the first American aircraft specifically designed as a night fighter, and one of only 2 purpose-built night fighters created during the entire war, alongside the German Heinkel He-219 Uhu. Named after the deadly North American spider Latrodectus mactans, the Black Widow was engineered to be a formidable predator of the night skies. For months, Japanese pilots had owned the night over the Pacific. Flying with near impunity after sunset, their bombers and fighters treated the darkness as their personal hunting ground. Allied interceptors were simply outmatched, blind in a world without light. But on the night of June 30th, 1944, all of that was about to change. Flying out of Saipan, Second Lieutenant Dale Haberman and his radar operator, Flight Officer Raymond Mooney, were prowling the skies in their brand new P-61A Black Widow call sign, Moon Happy. So far, the patrol with the 6th Night Fighter Squadron had been dead quiet. Just another long, dark night over the ocean, or so they thought. Suddenly, a crackle over the radio. Ground control had a bogey, a Japanese aircraft, heading straight for them. But this was no ordinary interceptor. The P-61 was a technological terror, a ghost painted in shadow, and the Japanese plane flying towards them was utterly blind, lacking the airborne radar to see what was coming. Instead of a head-on charge, Haberman played a deadlier game. He let the enemy bomber pass right overhead, a classic Predator's move, before banking his beast of a plane hard into a 180-degree turn, climbing to 17,000 feet. The trap was set. Moon Happy was now perfectly positioned on the enemy's 6, completely undetected. As Mooney stared into the green glow of his radar scope, a problem emerged. Ground control had only seen one blip, but Mooney's screen told a different story. This wasn't one target. It was 2. A Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber had brought a friend, a Zero fighter, tucked in tight under its wing, acting as a bodyguard. The mission just got a lot more complicated, but Haberman didn't hesitate. "I pulled the Widow up on her tail and nailed the Betty in the port engine," he later said. At a range of just 700 feet, the Black Widow's four 20mm cannons spoke for the first time in anger. A devastating 4-second burst ripped through the night, shredding the Betty's port engine and turning it into a raging inferno. The bomber, now a blazing coffin, broke apart and plummeted toward the black waters of the Pacific, exploding in a fireball that lit up the horizon. But the party wasn't over. Out of the chaos, the predator became the prey. The Zero escort broke off and was now screaming in on their tail. "Look out, Hap!" Mooney yelled. "There's a Jap fighter on our tail." This was the last mistake the Zero pilot would ever make. Demonstrating the raw power and agility of the P-61, Haberman slammed the throttles to the firewall. He threw the 15-ton fighter into a gut-wrenching steep diving turn, sending Moon Happy screaming towards the waves. Leveling out at just 200 feet, the maneuver was so violent and so fast that the pursuing Zero was left in the dark, its pilot wondering where his target had vanished. The message had been delivered in a hail of 20mm cannon fire. A new predator was on the hunt, and its name was the Black Widow. The night no longer belonged to Japan. Following this successful interception, Japanese forces quickly recognized they no longer possessed the safety of darkness. The psychological impact was immediate. Night raids became significantly more hazardous propositions, with these specialized predators lurking invisibly in the blackness. Additionally, this mission demonstrated the effectiveness of the P-61's revolutionary radar system in locating targets that relied on darkness for concealment. The victory validated the aircraft's design philosophy and tactical approach, proving that purpose-built night fighters could successfully engage and destroy enemy aircraft in complete darkness. In subsequent operations, the effectiveness of these tactics became even more apparent. During 5 days in December 1944, a lone P-61 cruise downed 8 Japanese aircraft, demonstrating the growing proficiency of Black Widow pilots and the increasing vulnerability of Japanese night operations. By late 1944, Japanese night raiders had become so scarce that many P-61 units were reassigned to interdiction missions targeting ground targets rather than aerial ones. The success of Moon Happy's crew established operational procedures that would be refined throughout the Pacific campaign, ultimately transforming night combat from an occasional encounter to a systematic hunting ground for Allied forces. Facing the P-61 plane in night combat became a nightmare scenario for Japanese aircrews throughout the Pacific theater. As radar-guided interceptions increased, Imperial Japanese pilots found themselves hunted by an adversary they could neither see nor effectively counter. The SCR-720 radar system mounted in the P-61 night fighter's nose revolutionized aerial combat tactics. This advanced technology could detect enemy aircraft at ranges between 5 and 16 miles, depending on atmospheric conditions. Japanese bombers accustomed to using darkness as cover suddenly found themselves visible to Black Widow crews regardless of altitude or weather. The radar detection process operated with deadly efficiency. First, ground controllers, using larger radar installations, would vector the P-61 Black Widow toward potential targets. Once within range, the aircraft's dedicated radar operator would take over guidance, tracking the target on his scope while directing the pilot. Simultaneously, the pilot could monitor a smaller radar display mounted on the instrument panel. For Japanese aircraft attempting to fly at wave-top level, a previously effective evasion tactic, the radar proved particularly devastating. In one documented instance, a Japanese pilot desperately maneuvered at extremely low altitude, ultimately striking the water and exploding without the P-61 firing a single shot. When radar guidance brought the P-61 fighter plane within attack range, its formidable armament ensured few targets survived. The Black Widow's arsenal included 4 20mm Hispano M2 cannons mounted in the lower fuselage, complemented by 4 50-caliber M2 Browning machine guns in a remotely operated dorsal turret. Notably, this turret could rotate a full 360 degrees with 90-degree elevation, covering the entire hemisphere above and to the sides of the aircraft. The radar operator could independently control this turret, enabling the P-61 Black Widow in War II to engage targets approaching from any direction, a capability that left Japanese pilots with virtually no safe approach vector. The effectiveness of this firepower became especially apparent in December 1944, when Black Widow crews downed 8 Japanese aircraft in just 5 days. This concentrated success demonstrated not only the deadliness of the P-61's weapon systems, but also the growing proficiency of its 3-person crews. Perhaps most terrifying for Japanese air crews was the P-61 plane's ability to approach completely undetected before striking. After February 1944, all Black Widows were painted jet black. After testing revealed this finish made the aircraft nearly invisible to enemy searchlights. This stealth advantage was further enhanced by specialized equipment. P-61 pilots utilized night binoculars with 5.8x magnification that gathered available light, allowing them to see targets 4 times farther than with the naked eye. With this technology, Black Widow crews could make visual confirmation of targets while remaining invisible themselves. Official records confirm that no P-61 was ever shot down by an enemy fighter, compelling evidence of the aircraft's effectiveness at avoiding detection. Consequently, as the war drew to a close, Japanese night raiders had become increasingly scarce as pilots recognized the deadly threat posed by these invisible predators. Behind the controls of the formidable P-61 plane crews, experienced combat unlike any other fighter pilots in World War II. Their first-hand accounts reveal the technical skill and coordination required to hunt in complete darkness. The P-61 Black Widow employed an unconventional control system that proved surprisingly effective in night combat. Instead of traditional ailerons, pilots manipulated 10-foot-long spoiler panels that rose from the upper surface of each wing. This unorthodox arrangement allowed nearly the entire trailing edge to be devoted to flaps, a critical design feature for night fighting. The spoilers worked well, noted test pilots contradicting initial engineering concerns. Nevertheless, achieving roll control required extreme yoke deflection at slower speeds, making turbulent conditions particularly challenging. At 330 mph, the P-61 fighter plane could roll at 50 degrees per second, taking over 7 seconds to complete a full aileron roll. Yet correspondingly, the aircraft possessed a remarkable talent for tight turns, especially at slower speeds. The P-61 night fighter could outmaneuver highly agile aircraft like the Corsair and even handily outturned the vaunted P-51 Mustang. This maneuverability, while typically unnecessary for standard night interceptions, occasionally proved life-saving when pilots needed to evade enemy fighters or obstacles. Within the 3-person crew configuration, the gunner occupied a crucial position directly behind the pilot. This arrangement facilitated immediate communication during critical moments of pursuit and engagement. The gunner controlled a sophisticated dorsal turret housing 4 50-caliber machine guns. Powered by the General Electric GE2CFR-12A3 gyroscopic fire control computer, this turret could rotate a full 360 degrees with 90-degree elevation, covering the entire hemisphere above and beside the aircraft. As a result, the P-61 Black Widow in war maintained defensive capability from virtually any approach angle. Moreover, the turret control system featured remarkable flexibility. Both the gunner and radar operator could direct the weapons through gyroscopic collimator sight assemblies attached to their swiveling seats. This redundancy ensured the P-61 plane maintained its defensive capabilities even if one crew member became incapacitated. Lieutenant Robert L. Ferguson, flying his P-61 fighter plane named the Virgin Widow, described the intense pressure of night combat. "We scrambled at 2200 hours, and it didn't take long to get airborne. By 2204 hours, we were airborne." This rapid response typified Black Widow operations throughout the Pacific. These untold stories about P-61 combat reveal the extraordinary skill required to operate these complex machines in total darkness, where split-second decisions and precise coordination between crew members determine success or failure. As the Pacific War drew to a close, a legendary P-61 plane named Lady in the Dark from the 548th Night Fighter Squadron etched its name in aviation history through an extraordinary achievement, scoring the final aerial victories of World War II without firing a single shot on the night of August 14th to 15th, 1945. As peace negotiations were underway, Lady in the Dark encountered a Nakajima Ki-43 Hayabusa Oscar over Japanese airspace. The P-61 night fighter's crew maneuvered their aircraft with such precision that they forced the Japanese plane into the sea without discharging their weapons. Remarkably, the following night, after hostilities had officially ended, the same P-61 fighter plane engaged a Nakajima Ki-44 Shoki Tojo. Throughout this engagement, both aircraft executed wild maneuvers as they jockeyed for position. The P-61 Black Widow's superior capabilities ultimately prevailed as the Japanese pilot attempting desperate evasive action crashed into the ground. This mission attained mythical status among aircrews, primarily because it demonstrated the P-61 Black Widow in war's psychological impact on enemy pilots. The intimidation factor alone proved sufficient to defeat Japanese aircraft. Additionally, these engagements represented the bookend to the conflict, the final aerial victories before and after Japan's surrender. Although never officially credited with these kills, the crew's achievement symbolized the culmination of American air superiority in the Pacific theater. These untold stories about P-61 operations illuminate how technical superiority, combined with tactical prowess, could overcome enemies without expending ammunition. Arguably the ultimate demonstration of dominance in aerial warfare. Throughout the final year of World War II, the P-61 plane carved out a formidable reputation that extended well beyond its combat record. The Black Widow's impact on the Pacific theater transcended its official tally of 127 enemy aircraft destroyed. By Christmas 1944, the P-61 night fighter had effectively changed Japanese aerial strategy, as Black Widows intercepted and destroyed multiple raiders during intensified nocturnal attacks on Saipan. Japanese bombing operations became increasingly hesitant. Eventually, night raids became so scarce that many P-61 units were reassigned to interdiction missions targeting ground targets instead of aerial ones. This shift in mission profile highlighted the psychological impact of the aircraft's mere presence. Japanese pilots now recognized that darkness no longer provided safe cover for operations. Interestingly, among the untold stories about P-61 operations was a remarkable misidentification. During the Cabanatuan prison camp raid on January 30th, 1945, a P-61 fighter plane performed diversionary low-altitude flybys while Army Rangers approached the facility. The pilot deliberately manipulated the aircraft to produce black exhaust smoke and engine backfires, thoroughly distracting Japanese guards. Among the freed prisoners were British soldiers captured at Singapore early in the war. Upon seeing the P-61 Black Widow in war, these prisoners became convinced that Germany had won the conflict, believing only the Luftwaffe could have created such a malevolent machine. For Allied forces, the Black Widow represented technological superiority and night mastery. Pilots valued its exceptional handling characteristics, as former Northrop test pilot Moise Stevens noted. The P-61 was a beautiful ship to fly. It didn't have a wicked bone in its body. Alongside combat duties, P-61 crews performed critical rescue operations, guiding submarines and destroyers to downed pilots in the ocean. Hence, the aircraft symbolized both offensive capability and protective presence for Allied airmen throughout the Pacific campaign. However, field operations throughout 1944 and 1945 revealed both the remarkable capabilities and inherent limitations of the P-61 Black Widow in actual combat conditions. As crews gained experience with this specialized aircraft, they developed tactics that maximized its effectiveness while minimizing its vulnerabilities. Despite its technological advantages, the P-61's sheer size created performance challenges. With a fully loaded weight exceeding 32,000 pounds, the Black Widow struggled in vertical climbs against nimbler Japanese fighters. Pilots reported difficulties intercepting fast-moving targets above 30,000 feet, primarily because the P-61's rate of climb diminished significantly at higher altitudes. Even with powerful twin R-2800 engines, the aircraft required over 12 minutes to reach 20,000 feet, considerably slower than contemporary single-engine fighters. P-61 crews developed specialized tactics to overcome these constraints. Rather than engaging in turning dogfights, pilots maintained energy through boom and zoom approaches, making single firing passes, then using the aircraft's weight to dive away from threats. Radar operators learned to vector pilots into optimal attack positions, typically from below and behind enemy aircraft, where the P-61's 4 forward-firing 20mm cannons could be most effective. Furthermore, crews often flew patrols at medium altitudes, where the aircraft performed best, relying on ground control intercept to guide them toward targets. Overall, P-61 squadrons achieved impressive results, given their limited deployment window. In fact, the Black Widow achieved a kill-to-loss ratio exceeding 5-1 in the Pacific Theater. Night fighter squadrons using P-61s claimed approximately 127 enemy aircraft destroyed by war's end, a modest number in absolute terms, but remarkable considering the specialized nature of night interception missions. This success rate firmly established the value of dedicated night fighters in modern air warfare. What makes the P-61 Black Widow so iconic? Let's talk about some of its notable designs. Jack Northrop's revolutionary design for the P-61 night fighter took shape as an aircraft unlike anything else in America's wartime arsenal. The largest pursuit-class aircraft flown by the U.S. during the war, the P-61 Black Widow embodied innovative solutions to the unique challenges of night combat. Northrop's twin-boom configuration represented a dramatic departure from conventional fighter design. This arrangement provided exceptional stability when closing in on enemy aircraft, a critical factor for positive target identification in darkness. The layout also offered unobstructed visibility for all crew members, with the pilot and gunner positioned under a stepped canopy and the radar operator in a clear bubble canopy at the rear. Moreover, the twin-boom design facilitated the inclusion of extraordinarily large wing flaps, essential for approaching and landing slowly during night operations. However, these massive flaps left no space for conventional ailerons, prompting engineers to implement spoilers for roll control instead. Initial concerns about this unorthodox control method proved unfounded after the first flight on May 26, 1942. Two-test pilot Vance Breeze declared that the XP-61 flies beautifully and is an old man's airplane, indicating its surprisingly docile handling characteristics. At the heart of the P-61's combat effectiveness was its SCR-720 radar system. The production model mounted a scanning radio transmitter in the aircraft's nose, with a detection range of nearly 5 miles in airborne intercept mode. The P-61C model featured an upgraded SCR-720C radar that could detect aircraft from approximately 16 miles away in good conditions. The radar operator, seated in an isolated rear compartment, accessed via a built-in ladder on the aircraft's underside, controlled the unit and viewed its display scopes. Upon locating targets, he would vector the pilot toward them through oral instructions. This advanced system allowed the P-61 to detect and engage enemy aircraft in complete darkness, a capability that proved decisive in the Pacific Theater. First, the P-61 featured an unprecedented crew arrangement of 3 specialists: pilot, gunner, and radar operator. This specialization allowed each crew member to focus exclusively on their task, without the distraction of other duties. Second, the Black Widow boasted exceptional firepower, with 4 20mm Hispano M2 forward-firing cannons mounted in the lower fuselage, making it one of the few U.S.-designed fighter aircraft with such powerful standard armament in World War II. This was complemented by 4 50-caliber M2 Browning machine guns in a remotely aimed dorsal turret. Uniquely, the turret was driven by the General Electric GE2CFR-12A3 gyroscopic fire control computer, and could be directed by either the gunner or radar operator. Both crew positions featured aiming control and gyroscopic collimator sight assembly posts attached to their swiveling seats. Finally, the P-61's all-metal construction and twin Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines provided the power and durability needed for its specialized mission profile. Though massive compared to conventional fighters, the aircraft remained surprisingly agile and responsive in flight. The legacy of the P-61 plane extended far beyond World War II, establishing the foundation for an entirely new class of military aircraft. Though operational for just 1 year, the Black Widow pioneered concepts that shaped aerial warfare for decades. As jet-powered aircraft began dominating military aviation after World War II, the P-61 Black Widow's operational career concluded relatively quickly. By the late 1940s, the aircraft was phased out of frontline service, directly replaced by the North American F-82 Twin Mustang. The F-82's radar-equipped variants featured a distinctive radar pod beneath the center wing, maintaining the night fighting capability pioneered by the P-61. Subsequently, the Lockheed F-94 Starfire emerged as the next evolutionary step in all-weather interceptors. The SCR-720 radar system fundamentally transformed aerial combat, establishing capabilities that became standard in post-war aircraft. With a detection range of nearly 5 miles, this technology foreshadowed the highly instrumented cockpits and specialized crew arrangements that would characterize future fighter development. The P-61's radar operator position, specifically designed for optimal effectiveness, demonstrated the importance of dedicated specialists in modern air warfare. Primarily, the Black Widow proved that owning the night required purpose-built aircraft. Henceforth, virtually every interceptor worldwide incorporated some level of all-weather capability. The P-61's integration of radar with specialized tactical approaches established that night combat demanded unique solutions, a concept that continues in today's 24-hour Air Force. Besides, upon war's end, several P-61s transitioned to vital research platforms. 13 P-61Cs participated in the Weather Bureau NACA Thunderstorm Project from 1946 through 1949, providing foundation for understanding thunderstorm formation and radar weather avoidance. The aircraft's ability to penetrate turbulent storms while returning crew and instruments intact made it ideal for this dangerous work. Additionally, NACA utilized P-61Cs to drop test drones, collecting valuable data on swept-wing flight characteristics. In April 1946, a P-61B served as the test platform for the first American ejection seat. Of 706, Black Widows built merely 4 complete examples survive today. The Smithsonian's P-61C serial number 43-8330, with just 530 total flight hours, resides at the Stephen F. Udvar Hazy Center. The National Museum of the United States Air Force displays another P-61 in Ohio. A third undergoes extensive restoration at the Mid-Atlantic Air Museum, potentially the only example that might fly again. Most others were unceremoniously scrapped overseas after the war. Former Northrop test pilot Moye Stevens praised the aircraft as a beautiful ship to fly that didn't have a wicked bone in its body. Throughout its service night, fighter crews enjoyed remarkable safety. Their loss rate was just 0.5%, with only 4 Widows lost none to direct enemy action. This exceptional night predator's distinctive appearance and evocative name made it a favorite among aviation enthusiasts. Even today, its technological innovations in radar-guided combat and night-fighting tactics leave an enduring legacy on military aviation. In the final analysis, the story of the Northrop P-61 Black Widow is more than just the history of an aircraft. It is a reflection of the very nature of war itself. It begins with the sorrow of war, the brutal necessity born from the fires of the London Blitz, a response to a new and terrifying form of destruction. Yet from this crucible of fear and loss rose a testament to human ingenuity, a machine designed not just to fight in the dark, but to master it. The Black Widow was a paradox in metal and wire. It was a massive, lumbering giant that could outturn the most agile fighters of its day. It was a complex, problem-plagued engineering nightmare that in the hands of its skilled crews became an instrument of lethal precision. Its legacy is not measured solely by its tally of 127 enemy aircraft downed, but by the battles that were never fought, the Japanese night raids that ceased the B-29s that returned home safely, and the Allied airmen who knew a guardian angel flew in the darkness above them. From the skies over Saipan to the laboratories of Nasie, the P-61 proved that to conquer a new frontier, whether it be the nocturnal battlefield or the heart of a thunderstorm, requires a purpose-built solution. It established the doctrine of the all-weather radar-guided interceptor, a concept that would define air power for the next half-century. Today, as a handful of these silent predators rest in museums, they stand as monuments to a unique moment in history. They are symbols of a time when the night itself was a contested domain and victory belonged to those who could see in the dark. The P-61 Black Widow was America's answer. A machine born of sorrow, forged in innovation, and destined to become the undisputed king of the midnight sky.